Hey everyone, welcome to a special broadcast of Live with Normal. Today's show is a century of advocacy and care. Experts respond to the federal hemp THC limits. I'm going to be joined today by a number of special guests. Let's go ahead and welcome all of you, our viewers, to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have questions, we're here to answer those, so be sure to drop those in the comments and let us know where you are watching from. Today, 3 of the nation's leading cannabis advocacy and patient care organizations, NORML, the Society for Cannabis Clinicians, and the Marijuana Policy Project, are coming together to have this very timely discussion in response to recent federal changes impacting hemp-derived THC. Here we have over a century of combined experience advancing sensible cannabis policy, patient protections, and evidence-informed clinical care. This panel is going to offer clear, grounded conversation about what's changing, what it means, and what comes next. So let's go ahead and welcome our first guest to today's show. Dr. Patricia Fry is here. Dr. Fry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Pleasure to have you. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Patricia Fry. I am certified by the American Board of Pediatrics and the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. I also completed postgraduate training in anesthesiology, where I was trained in critical care and pain management. And I'm professionally certified by the University of Vermont School of Medicine in Cannabis Science and Medicine. I've served on the clinical faculty of the University of Maryland's School of Pharmacy's master's program in medical cannabis science and therapeutics. And I began my career in cannabis medicine in about 2015 as a recommending physician and eventually becoming the chief medical officer for a California-based online medical cannabis certification platform. And that was also where I was first introduced to the Society of Cannabis Clinicians, whose clinically focused educational curriculum gave me the foundation that I felt I needed to make appropriate recommendations for my patients. SCC was established in 1999 by Todd McArea, a California psychiatrist, and it has been instrumental in educating physicians, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, as well as advocates. And in 2019, I joined the board of the SCC, and since that time have chaired the education committee. I also have a private practice which focuses on addressing chronic conditions with cannabis medicine, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. And I've evaluated and made recommendations for literally thousands of patients who vary in functionality from bedridden to highly functioning and who ranged in age from 6 months to 103 years old.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Fry. I'm going to welcome some more guests, and then we'll hear from you a little bit later, okay?
Okay.
All right. Next, we are going to welcome Adam Smith from the Marijuana Policy Project. Adam, thanks for joining us, friend.
Hello. I want to apologize up front for sitting in my car. We just got power back on the Oregon coast after 20 hours, and the winds are now back up to 40 miles an hour. And where I live without Wi-Fi, there's no cell service. So I am in my car 5 miles from home. So forgive me. I mean no disrespect for looking like this on your webinar. Thank you so much for having me. I am the executive director of the Marijuana Policy Project. I've been involved on and off in drug policy and cannabis policy reform since 1994, which makes me old. And we are committed, the Marijuana Policy Project is committed to cannabinoid and cannabis policies grounded in public health, public safety, and public access. And so this is a timely and interesting topic on a doubly interesting day, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Adam. And wow, that's some fantastic dedication on your part to make the trek to civilization.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Thank you. I'll bring you back in a little bit to hear from
Nope.
you. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent.
And last but certainly not least, we have a regular here that'll be joining us, Normal's own Paul Armentano. Hey, Paul.
Good afternoon, JM.
Good afternoon. Tell everyone who you are, just in case they don't know.
Sure. My name's Paul Armentano. I'm Normal's Deputy Director. I have been working on cannabis advocacy reform since 1994. So, in fact, Adam and I are some of the original OGs in this movement. My goal has always been to change the way people talk about cannabis so that ultimately we can change the way people think about cannabis. And when we change the way people think about cannabis, ultimately we can change the culture and we will change the laws about cannabis. So it is my hope that we move from rhetoric-based cannabis policies to evidence-based cannabis policies. And the best way to do that is to have conversations like these where we talk about the evidence, we talk about the data, and then we talk about how we can enact common sense reforms that reflect that evidence, that reflect that data.
Well, thank you, Paul. We're going to go ahead and hear from Dr. Fry, and then we'll have you back to share some thoughts as well. All right.
So,
All right. Fantastic. Welcome back, Dr. Fry. I would love it if you could share with the audience your thoughts on the therapeutic values of not only CBD, but other minor cannabinoids as well. You have really firsthand experience and a lot of it with patients who use these products and know how they may have benefited from them. So we'd love to hear about that in your clinical experience.
All right. So the vast majority of my patients are generally recommended a combination of cannabinoids, mostly CBD and THC in various ratios, with the addition of some of the other minor cannabinoids in the plant, such as CBG, CBC, and CBDV, and the acidic cannabinoids, CBDA, THCA, CBGA. All of these cannabinoids or molecules in the plant are in an acidic form in the raw plant. And when the plant is heated, there is a conversion into what we call neutral forms, which are the CBD, THC, CBG cannabinoids that people are most familiar with. And these molecules are produced naturally in the plant. So when we use things like CBDA or CBD, CBGA, CBG, these are from plant varietals that have been bred to produce higher concentrations of these molecules, because most of the plants will produce an abundance of THCA and CBDA. So when the plant is heated, then they become CBD, THC, or whichever cannabinoid is needed. And they have various benefits. CBD is a really good anti-inflammatory. Its anti-inflammatory benefit is improved with CBG, which acts on a different part of the cell in our bodies. CBG is really good for anxiety. It interacts with another system called our alpha-2 adrenergic system, which is what gives us our fight-flight feeling. So that nervous, hypervigilant, anxious feeling can be mitigated by using something like CBG. CBDV has been very helpful in children with autism, along with CBD and CBG, It activates, it actually interacts with another system called the GABA glutamate system, where glutamate is very excitatory and is often elevated in conditions that are related to seizures, irritability, aggressiveness, particularly in autism. And CBDA is another good anti-inflammatory by another mechanism than CBD. So it adds to CBD's anti-inflammatory benefit. Most chronic conditions, almost all chronic conditions have an inflammatory component. THCA also has some anti-inflammatory benefits. It also is a pain reliever and has anti-nausea benefits. THCA, unlike THC, is not impairing. There's no euphoric high. It's not what would be called intoxicating. I don't like that word because it sounds toxic, but we know that THC can be a problem for some patients where it's not euphoric, but can be dysphoric or uncomfortable. CBGA also has anti-inflammatory benefits, and at least in some animal studies or laboratory studies, we've found that it has some antimicrobial benefits, particularly against MRSA, which is the methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, which is commonly acquired in the hospital. CBDVA has been shown to have anti-inflammatory and anti-seizure benefits. So these are molecules that are found in the plant naturally. CBD, THC are the most abundant, and then these cannabinoids that I've mentioned, CBG, CBDV, THCV, are found in the plant, not in abundance, but in enough of a concentration that when the plants are bred, we can breed higher concentrations of these molecules that we need. And this differs from a lot of the products that we're seeing now on the open market that are not produced in abundance, but are produced in very teeny tiny concentrations in the plant, like Delta 8 and Delta 10 THC, THCP, CBDP. These are cannabinoids that we have very little knowledge about. We are not familiar with them. And unlike the other major and somewhat minor cannabinoids, we as humans with our 3,000 years or more experience with cannabis have not had a lot of experience with these cannabinoids. They are not grown in the plant naturally. They are produced by taking CBD dominant flower and treating this flower with acids and then with neutralizing solvents to convert CBD into Delta 8 THC, Delta 9 THC, THCP, CBDP. And so this is done in unregulated markets. These solvents and acids have to be removed from the products. They are not always done properly. So some of these products are contaminated with these acids and solvents. The other issue is that cannabis is an environmental cleaner. So if someone is growing hemp outdoors, even if they're not spraying their crop, if the farmer down the road is spraying his, this hemp plant will absorb all of the pesticides that are in the air. They also absorb things like lead, cadmium, arsenic from the soil and from the water. So in some of these markets where the plant is being manipulated into producing these what we call synthetic cannabinoids, there's no regulation. There may not be testing. If they do produce certificates of analysis or test results, oftentimes those results are falsified or fabricated. So there's a big difference between the gas station or the unlicensed cannabis store that is selling things like Delta 8, Delta 10, and some of these other cannabinoids. There's a big difference between that and these cannabis molecules that we get from legitimate, some of them licensed depending on their states, and others who are producing these products. And many of us who treat patients have over the years independently tested different brands to see about accuracy, their labeling accuracy, to see what's in the plant. Are they tested for bacteria, fungi, pesticides, and all of these other contaminants that can be harmful to patients? And so many of us have sort of a cadre of brands that we know to be safe for our patients. We don't have that with many of these products that are popping up as a result of some loopholes in the 2018 Farm Bill. And that's sort of a general overview of these cannabinoids. I don't know how much more detail you'd like for me to go into.
Well, you did just touch on the Farm
I
Bill.
can't hear you, JM.
You can't hear me? Oh, no. Okay, well, hopefully our audience can, and we are going to talk about the impending changes at the federal level, and Paul Armentano from Normal is going to join us and talk about the history of this policy and policy change. Hey, Paul.
Hey there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So yeah, so as I'm sure most folks who are streaming on this already know, that there was an act of law that occurred just several weeks ago where Congress did amend the 2018 Farm Bill. Specifically, they amended how that bill or how that law defines a hemp-derived product. So in 2018, when Congress initially declassified or descheduled hemp, they left the terminology with respect to what constituted a hemp-derived product fairly open-ended. Essentially, the law said that if the original source material for the end product was the hemp plant, then regardless of what that end product was, it could still be considered under the law a hemp-derived product. And that's how we ended up having a number of these unregulated products on the market that were very high in Delta 8 THC or Delta 10 THC. As Dr. Fry explained, those compounds are not organic to the hemp plant in large quantities. They were produced following a chemical synthesis that began with the hemp plant, and that began with CBD derived from that hemp plant. So the change that is expected to go into effect in 1 year redefines which ones of these end products are legal under federal law and which products are not. Specifically, the new law going forward will delineate between those products that are organically produced from hemp versus those that are the result of a synthetic conversion. Those products that are a result of a synthetic conversion will no longer be legal under the federal statute. Products that are organically produced from hemp and do not contain traceable amounts of THC above 0.3% of 0.3% will still be considered to be hemp. Now, to be clear, this is not a policy that's taking immediate effect. This is a policy that is expected to take effect 1 year from when the law was signed. So we're talking essentially about November 12th, 2026. But it's also a policy that runs up against a number of state laws. Right now, there is a patchwork system with the states with respect to how they regulate or do not regulate these products. So for instance, right now, there are 20 states that explicitly regulate hemp-derived products, and those regulations are going to differ from what the federal government is proposing. Conversely, there's 10 states that already prohibit hemp-derived products. Those policies are largely going to be aligned with the new federal rules going forward. So my point here is that there is still going to be this lack of agreement between how states are treating hemp and how the federal government wants hemp-derived products to be treated, even if and after this new federal policy takes effect.
Yeah, and I bet Adam has some thoughts. Let's go ahead and have him join us as well.
Now I can't hear you. Suddenly, when you switched to me, I lost your audio, and I am.
Well, can you hear me, Paul?
I can.
Oh, can you hear Paul?
I can hear Paul.
Great.
Well, Adam, JM is asking you to weigh in on some of the details of the revised Farm Bill and what we can expect, what the implications of those changes may be, and what folks who are interested in this issue, what steps they might be able to take in the interim.
I have an idea as to why Adam can't hear me. It's because we can't see him either. But we'll see if Adam is able to rejoin us again. But for now, Paul, why don't we talk a little bit more about that? And I am seeing some comments where people are mentioning the 0.4 milligram limit that would be imposed by this federal action. Let's see if Adam's back now.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So there we go. So the implications of this, I think, I find it interesting that there were right that wanted all these products banned, and I find it interesting that they did not ban them immediately. The fact that there was a year put in there tells me that there was pushback in the Senate against an outright immediate upending of this end part of the market. And so I think that provides an opportunity to have a conversation about how do we regulate cannabinoids going forward. I mean, for those of us who've been involved in drug policy reform for a long time, once unregulated gummies started appearing in gas stations, it was always a matter of time before a stop was put to that in an unregulated way. And in fact, it was a little surprising to me that it took so long in many of the states to address this. But over the last few years, the states have begun to address it. As Paul noted, 20 states are now regulating these products. And so I think there is a real opportunity. What I don't think is going to happen is we're not going to go back to the world as it was 3 months ago. I don't think there's any scenario in which this ban or this clarification by the Senate gets overturned. We just go back to a free for all. But I think that's also. I mean, I think that's a good thing because as Dr. Fry mentioned and as Paul mentioned. There were a lot of these, while there are plenty of good actors on the hemp side, there are a lot of products that have gone out on the open market that contained solvents or pesticides or synthetics. And these synthetic molecules, we just don't know what they do to folks. And it's not responsible to be advocating for, the unregulated marketing of molecules that were created in a lab that we really don't have a good sense of what their impact is on public health. And really only exists because of prohibition, right? And so I think this year is going to be a big opportunity, and I know we're not going to touch on the Schedule 3 issue that's that's everywhere today. Actually today, as we record this. But I think that we are at a moment after a number of years of stalled progress, right? And as we're seeing pushback in states on the adult use market, I think we're at a moment where we have to have the conversation, and the conversation is the conversation that we started, 30 years ago, which is prohibition versus regulation. And what does that mean in a responsible society, in a free society? And I think that the opportunity exists. I like to say sometimes that hope is my drug of choice. And so while I can see bad outcomes from all this happening, I'm also hopeful that the country's attention and political attention is starting to turn back to this issue. And we can once and for all get to a point where we're moving forward on rational cannabinoid policy that protects public health and safety, but offers access to folks.
Thank you so much, Adam. And I'm going to bring Dr.
It turns out when the three of us are on, I cannot hear you. And when Paul gets off, so just letting you know, I will be quiet now. You can follow up with Paul.
Great. Well, Paul, I appreciate Adam's take on that. And I think we're going to bring back Dr. Fry so we can hear thoughts on practical guidance for patients. Are you able to hear me? Let's have Paul be the in between. Paul, I would like to hear from Dr. Fry on practical guidance for patients next year if this does in fact take effect.
So Dr. Fry, JM is asking you to weigh in on practical guidance for patients going forward who may have found success with these products and may have concerns about their continued access to them. Are you unable to hear me? Well, JM, it looks like we are still having audio difficulties.
Paul, what practical guidance would you offer to consumers who are concerned about what's going to happen if they don't have access to these products?
Well, I think, by and large, much of this is going to be dependent on where patients are currently living. For instance, if they're living in a state that already has a regulated medical access program, their access to these products within that program is not going to change. Where there could be changes are for patients that are residing in the minority of states that don't yet have regulated access to cannabis products. It is possible in some of those states that there could be, we could see these providers of these products preemptively closing shop, or we could see a greater enforcement of folks that are providing these products. But I'm not necessarily sure that's going to be the case. There are a number of states that I can think of, like Texas, for instance, like Florida, for instance, that while that specifically regulate rules with respect to the production and sale of these products. And I don't think they're going to roll back those state-specific regulations just because the federal government may be going in a different direction. And I don't believe the federal government has the resources or necessarily even the mindset to go into those jurisdictions and shut down those markets in a sort of blanket fashion. So I think it's very important for patients to be aware of the policies of their own states. And certainly if they are residing in a state that is currently regulating these products, to be in touch with their lawmakers, to make sure that their lawmakers stand up to keep those regulations in place in the face of any potential intervention. We have seen historically with cannabis policies that states have the ability to lead and move forward to enact common sense cannabis regulations in spite of what the federal government may wish or desire that they do. And I think that's going to be the case here. I also think that there could be an inducement for some of these providers to potentially provide cleaner, more purified products. Look, we are hearing that the administration is going to open up doors in the next couple of months, for instance, to have certain CBD products reimbursed through Medicare and Medicaid. So I don't think it's the intention of this administration to outright go ahead and necessarily ban these products. They understand that many Americans are using them. About 35% of Americans say they use CBD right now. About 70% of those who say they use it say they do so medically. So I do think we are hopefully going to see further guidance coming from the federal government, making it clear that there is legitimate medical utility as acknowledged by the federal government for these products, and that there are going to be clear regulatory channels going forward for many of the patients who rely on them.
Paul, I want to highlight this comment from Dr. Goldstein, who's joining us on YouTube, and she says, none of my families will allow their children to go back to seizures or autism challenges after years of life-changing improvements. They'll go back underground, just like the old days. And I appreciate very much her joining us and having that comment. I know that Adam has some thoughts as well. I'm going to pop him into the stage. Hopefully Adam can hear us.
Hello, I can hear you, and hopefully we're all good. This has been such a logistical 2 days with this storm, and now anyway. So here, I appreciate Paul's outlook on this. My concern is for patients in states that do not have regulated medical programs, and that what we are seeing on the hemp derived side is, if the feds decide, or as the feds get closer to confirming this, this ban, whatever you want to call it, I think that there are going to be logistical problems for the companies that are providing these products into those markets. Particularly, up until now, they've been able to ship products interstate. They've been able to take credit cards. They've been able to bank, and I think that the federal government might not have to do much enforcement if it becomes clear that they are outlawing this, that a lot of that may very well just go away, just because the private, banking financial systems are not going to want to touch this, or may not want to touch this. In which case, what if, we are going to be dependent on states standing up? But even then, what it may look like is something more akin to the regulated medical cannabis programs, which that everything has to stay within the state. And in a lot of states, there are not producers, or there are very few producers. And so while the states have always led on this is a different pathway, and it's not clear how many states will stand up, and if they do, and that's going to be about advocacy, right? I mean, that we come back to, it gets harder for states, especially at the state level, who are responsible to their constituents in a more direct way than federal legislators. It's hard to look at mothers in the eye, right? And Dr. Goldstein brought this up, whose children have, stopped having seizures 100 times a week and are living normal lives, and tell them, no, we're sorry, we just don't think it's a good idea for you to have access. And so states may stand up, but it may become logistically impossible for the companies that are providing it into states to continue to do that. And so I think there is a threat that in a lot of places where folks are now accessing these products and don't have access to a regulated medical cannabis program, that it's going to become more difficult to legally access products where they are. And that's something that advocacy needs to stand up and defend, with all of our strength.
Thank you, Adam. I couldn't agree more. It looks like Dr. Fry is back and has good audio now. So let's have her rejoin us, and hopefully hear your practical guidance for patients who next year could be facing lack of access.
Well, I don't know that I have any guidance for access, particularly in states where there's no medical program. If the states with medical programs take up the charge of increasing the accessibility of high CBD products or CBD medicines that have THC and CBG and a lot of these cannabinoids that we have found to be very helpful, especially for conditions like autism. And I did see where Bonnie that these parents need access to medicines for seizures. A lot of these kids don't have are not able to access Epidiolex because they don't meet the diagnostic criteria, and they can't access it without insurance coverage, which they're not eligible for. So it's going to be, if something's not done, I really don't know what parents or what patients can do other than getting what they can and hoping that it will last through this dilemma. The need for these medicines I cannot overemphasize. The pain patients, the chronic pain patients, can often get CBD THC ratios of 1-to-1 in the dispensaries. A lot of this state dispensaries still produce and sell these medicines, but for patients who are sensitive to THC that need higher ratios, 15-to-1, 20-to-1, 10-to-1, those are becoming very difficult to find. There's some programs that have THC with CBG or CBG with CBD. But my biggest concern is for the patients who are in states that have no access. A lot of these patients and parents have depended on the ability to order products from another state and have them delivered to them, shipped to them. I think Adam, touched on that, being able to use credit cards and the USPS or FedEx or however, whatever delivery system can bring these products to them. If the patients are not in a state that has medical, it's going to be a big problem, and it's heartbreaking to. A bulk of my practice is in pediatrics is autism, and I have seen, just the whole quality of life improve, not only for the patients, but for these patients' families, for their parents, their siblings. CBD and CBG, with low THC, have been it's been phenomenal in the improvement and on many of these kids who suffer from irritability, aggressive and self-injurious behavior. We have no pharmaceuticals that are FDA approved to address core symptoms of autism. Impaired expressive language, impaired social interaction, and repetitive behaviors. Many of these children and young adults, we actually see their improvement in their core symptoms. The pharmaceuticals that the FDA has approved for the coexisting conditions with autism were passed. They were approved with minimal efficacy, just 20% over placebo. And many of these medications have significant health impairing side effects. The atypical antipsychotics like risperidone and aripiprazole or Abilify, they cause massive weight gain. And then we're faced with metabolic syndrome and fatty liver, and then other comorbidities or coexisting conditions that are fueled by metabolic syndrome. So it's a big problem. I don't think people realize how much we depend on a lot of these cannabinoid medicines that are CBD dominant, or with CBG, CBDV, even THCV. So I don't know the answer.
Well, thank you. And I think we're going to talk to Adam about advocacy for these patients. Let's bring in Adam. What do you think, Adam?
And I'm back to not being able to hear you. I'm so sorry. I feel like this is on me, and yet I don't think there's anything I can do.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, JM.
Do you and Adam want to talk about
I
how
can hear Paul.
and consumers can engage in advocacy around this issue?
Absolutely. So I think Adam hit the nail on the head when he said this really comes down to advocacy. That's what groups like Normal and MPP do. That's what we've been doing for decades. And in many ways, it's the advocacy, not just of talking heads like myself or like Adam, but it's the advocacy of our constituents. It's the advocacy from patients, from parents, from family members, directly lobbying their lawmakers and making their lawmakers understand that these are products that they rely on for their health. It is that narrative 30 years ago that really began to change this entire discussion. And we can't take our foot off the accelerator when it comes to advocacy. Absent advocacy, we don't continue to move our issue forward. And frankly, without advocacy, we run the risk of moving backwards, of slipping behind. So this, if anything, is really a call for all of us, our organizations and our members, to double down on emphasizing the need for advocacy and becoming effective advocates and making sure there is a direct line of communication between us and our lawmakers, not just at the federal level, but at the state level as well. And I'm sure, Adam, you'll want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, the hopeful thing, and again, I come back to hope being, the driving force behind, a career in advocacy, is that if, as Paul mentioned, if you look back, the thing that started this, the thing that really moved cannabis from a 20% issue to an issue that we've seen so much progress on over 30 years was patients and patients' voices. Advocacy that comes out of suffering and dire need, that is human, that has a face, and that stands and looks at lawmakers and says, "This is my experience, and you cannot tell me anything different, and this is what we need." And it's compelling, right? Medical cannabis has, still to this, 90% support, right, among the electorate. About the same number of people believe medical cannabis should be available as believe the earth is round, right? This is not controversial, right? And yet it's still drug policy. And so we still run up against, the same arguments and the same concerns and the same foot dragging that we did 30 years ago, but putting patients out front, showing the human side of this, and really making the case of why this is vital in the lives of not just patients, but as Dr. Fry said, their families, especially with kids, is the most powerful thing that we can do. That requires voices, it requires resources, but it is winnable. It was winnable 30 years ago, and it's winnable now. But I think, again, we are at an interesting moment because for the last 5 or 6 years, advocacy has shrunk around this issue, partially due to our own success, right? We won state after state after state. The philanthropists that got involved in this and supported these efforts because of personal freedom issues or medical need issues, looked around and said, "Oh, we're winning this issue, and now there's an industry around to do this." And a lot of that support moved on, to fund psychedelic research or space travel or whatever, billionaires are funding this year. And so, and at the same time that was happening, the industry itself really began to suffer due to a lot of the contradictions between federal law and state law and what they're required to do. And so we have watched advocacy shrink, and in this weakened spot, we now face, real issues and real threats to the original impetus for this entire, for all of our progress, which was medical need. And so it is a clarion call for all of us to get together to reestablish advocacy in a robust way, for people to stand up, and for this case to be made at a very human level. And I think that if we do that well, we really have a chance not only to stop backsliding, but to establish a much more comprehensive vision for how these products need to be made available to people, and be made available safely, right? Not just I can order it online, and I'm pretty hopeful that it's clean. right? Because I kind of trust this company, but that something is tested and regulated and labeled in a way that people can trust. And that's what we need to get to. We haven't quite gotten there yet. But again, this is a platform for us to have that conversation and for people to make this human.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Adam. I see one comment that we've had a few times, and I'm going to address that real quick. And then, Paul, we're going to move into our closing thoughts for the day. Paul, we've had this question a few times today already, asking, would normal and MPP craft legislation to eliminate taxes on medical products? And this is actually something that we've done before. We'll use Virginia as the example, of course. In Virginia, there is no tax on medical cannabis because we do not tax medicine in the state of Virginia. Certainly, advocates, activists, those working in the states directly know best how to move that issue forward, but they can absolutely partner with us to help advance it. In addition to that, Paul, what other thoughts do you have about engaging on this issue for your closing comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I do just want to add to what you said there, JM, is that most states do not impose additional taxes on cannabis products that are regulated in the medical market. There's really only a handful of states that do, and that is not a policy that we support. It is a policy that we oppose, and we are ready to assist activists and certainly lawmakers in those handful of states that do impose those exorbitant taxes with efforts to roll them back. We have been very vocal in recent years about how lawmakers should not be viewing those who use cannabis as some sort of ATM machine or some way for them to try to bridge their budgets. These are consumers, these are patients. They're not individuals who should be seen again as opportunities for these lawmakers to try to raise funds. That being said, I would encourage everyone who cares about this issue to really take up the mantle that Adam threw down and that I talked about earlier, that said, for the first time in a long time, our movement is facing significant headwinds, and we have to be ready to face those challenges. And the way we do so is going back to our roots. It's focusing on activism. It's focusing on putting patient stories, consumers' interests first, putting them in touch with lawmakers, making sure those communications are taking place, and making sure lawmakers understand that this is an issue that is supported by Democrats, by Republicans, by independents, that this being on the right side of cannabis policy means being on the right side of history. It's not only common sense, it's also good politics.
Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks so much. We're going to hear from Adam with his closing thoughts now.
And I can't hear you again. Maybe you can pass it through Paul.
Perfect, Paul. Want to tell Adam what he's going to do?
Sure, Adam.
What am I going to do, Paul?
We're wrapping up, and we're asking
Excellent.
for your closing thoughts.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It has been a little bit of an adventure, but this is such a great panel, and I have to say, I am not by nature a science guy, but just listening to Dr. Fry is even for a few minutes is an education, and so this has been terrific, and her work is super important. I think we touched on it. I think nobody knows the answer exactly to how this is going to play out. In politics, we have to live with a lot of uncertainty, but that shows us where we need to put our efforts. And this is certainly core. Access to medicine is core to everything that we have done. And I will say that while industry has a role to play in advocating for this, it is very difficult, even if they are credible people, for industry to be credible on things like public health and safety. And especially since their bottom line depends on selling more product, and everyone understands that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But this is why independent advocacy is so vital. And because we can talk about this in terms of good public policy without a profit incentive, with our only incentive being to help and support and protect patients, to expand personal freedom, and to end arrests. And so this is our moment. We are either going to stand up here, or we're going to watch forces that have never gone away push back and limit not only the progress we've made, but our chances for the future. And so stand up, folks. It's going to be an interesting year. But we're all in it together, and we know this is a winnable issue. So let's do that.
Thank you so much, Adam. And finally, friends, we are going to hear from Dr. Fry and her closing thoughts on this topic.
Okay. And also thank you for inviting me. This has been a great opportunity to share our concerns about losing our access to these medicines. I know the SEC supports the single policy that for regular products, whether they're legacy, licensed, or the hemp market, that could be adopted federally and by all the 50 states without a lot of bureaucracy or costly enforcement mechanisms. But we need one consistent standard that regulates things like age verification, testings for purity and potency, and also for accurate labeling and transparency. Our efforts are in preserving these medicines is, yes, there are issues with the synthetically produced cannabinoids, but we're watching the baby being thrown out with the bathwater. And we need a little bit more precision in an approach to rectifying the problems that we're seeing with these unregulated and perhaps unsafe products being available. But we have to preserve these naturally occurring cannabinoid medicines for our patients who either are THC sensitive or just don't have access through state programs where they live.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Fry, how can viewers engage with Society of Cannabis Clinicians if they'd like to get involved?
We are happy to have you come to our website. The society is it's cannabisclinicians.org. We welcome your membership. We have so much to share in terms of education and policy and recommendations for patients that everyone, whether you're a professional, medical professional, an advocate, an ancillary care, or a family member, you will definitely benefit from joining us and learning about what we've been studying for over 25 years.
Well, thank you so much for lending your expertise today. And thank you to Society of Cannabis Clinicians for organizing today's broadcast. It was a pleasure to speak with you, Dr. Fry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who have joined us for today's conversation. Today looks like it could be a very big day for cannabis policy news. So be sure to stay tuned, hit that like, follow, or subscribe button wherever you're watching. And please share this and all of our content with your friends, your family, your network, so that you are amplifying this message and our collective work, ending America's war on cannabis. If you'd like to get more involved with Adam and Marijuana Policy Project, you can find them at mpp.org. And as always, you can find NORML at normal.org. That's NORML.org. There's probably more to come in the day around cannabis policy issues that you're going to want to hear about. So stay tuned, friends, and we will have another episode of Live with NORML for you tomorrow, because it looks like it could be a big news day. Friends, I'm J.M. Padini, the Development Director here at the National Organization for Marijuana Laws. And as always, I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.